My wife and I have been together since we were 16 years old. High school sweethearts, they used to call us. 15 years of shared history, 2 beautiful daughters, and what I thought was an unbreakable bond forged through adolescence, young adulthood, and the trials of building a life together. But sometimes the very foundation you think is solid turns out to be built on shifting sand. I recently discovered that she had been cheating on me for the past year with someone who wasn't just any random person, it was our best friend. Someone who had been woven into the fabric of our lives so completely that his betrayal felt like losing a limb. To understand the depth of this betrayal, you need to understand who this man was to us. We'd all known each other since middle school, back when friendships felt simple and permanent. He and my wife had actually dated briefly in 6th grade, one of those innocent childhood romances that lasted a few months before dissolving into the kind of friendship that would span decades. At the time, it seemed so insignificant, so far removed from the adults we would become. He stayed in our orbit through high school, becoming not just her friend but mine as well. There was something reliable about him, something steady that drew people in. He was the kind of person who showed up. When I needed help moving, he was there with his truck. When we had car trouble, he was the first call we made. When my oldest daughter was learning to ride a bike, he was there cheering her on, running alongside her with the same enthusiasm I had. The relationship he built with my daughter was something that, in hindsight, should have made me proud of the man I called friend. He remembered her birthday, attended her school events when he could, and treated her with the kind of gentle patience that made her light up when he walked into a room. At the time, I thought it was beautiful, this man who had chosen to be part of our extended family, who loved my child as if she were his own niece. He was there through everything. When my mother passed away 3 years ago, he was one of the first people at the funeral home. When my wife's father had his heart attack, he spent hours in that hospital waiting room, bringing us coffee and making sure we ate something. When I got promoted at work, he was genuinely excited for me. When we struggled financially during the early years, he never made us feel small about it. 2 years ago, when my wife and I finally decided to have the wedding we'd always dreamed of, there was never any question about who would be my best man. He stood beside me at the altar, handed me the rings, and gave a speech that made everyone cry. He talked about friendship, about loyalty, about how rare it was to find people who would stick with you through anything. I remember looking at him during that speech and feeling overwhelmed with gratitude for having someone like him in my life. But our marriage, the one he celebrated that day, had been struggling for years. My wife and I had been together since we were children, really, and we'd never learned how to be adults together. We'd never had the chance to figure out who we were individually before we became a unit, before we became parents, before we became responsible for shaping young lives when we were barely out of adolescence ourselves. We had our first daughter when we were 17, just 1 year into our relationship. I often wonder if we would have stayed together without her. The pregnancy was unplanned, but we were determined to make it work. We were going to be different from the statistics, different from the teenage parents who couldn't handle the pressure. We were going to prove that love was enough. But love, as I learned, isn't always enough when you don't know how to express it properly. The roots of my emotional immaturity ran deep, back to a childhood that had shaped me in ways I wouldn't understand until much later. I grew up without a father, not absent by choice, but absent nonetheless. My mother was present in body but not in the way that mattered most. She provided everything I needed to survive: food, shelter, clothing, safety. But she never provided the thing I needed most: emotional connection. I don't blame her now. She was doing her best with what she had, dealing with her own pain and limitations. But a child doesn't understand context. A child just knows that affection feels foreign, that vulnerability feels dangerous, that love is something you provide through action rather than words or touch. This emotional stunting followed me into my relationship with my wife. When she needed comfort, I didn't know how to give it. When she needed reassurance, I thought providing financially was enough. When she needed to feel seen and valued, I assumed that my presence was sufficient proof of my love. I thought that as long as we stuck together, we'd weather any storm. Our biggest problem was communication, but it was deeper than just not talking. It was about not knowing how to be emotionally present for each other. When we argued, I would get defensive because every criticism felt like an attack on my worth as a person. I couldn't separate her frustration with a situation from her feelings about me as a husband and father. She would yell and talk at me, trying to get through to someone who had built walls so high that even she couldn't climb them. What I couldn't see then was that she wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't being too demanding or too emotional. She was drowning, and I was standing on the shore thinking she was just splashing around. When I was about 20 years old, I proposed to her. I thought marriage would solve our problems, that making it official would somehow give us the tools we lacked. But we never actually went through with it. We just kept putting it off, telling ourselves we'd do it when we were more financially stable, when we had more time, when things were less complicated. 4 years ago, I finally said enough was enough. We deserved to celebrate our love properly. We deserved the wedding we'd always talked about. So we planned it, and it was beautiful. She looked stunning, I felt proud, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. That week, she found out she was pregnant with our second daughter. We had been trying to conceive for 6 years, dealing with the heartbreak of failed attempts and the doctors who couldn't give us clear answers. The timing felt magical, like the universe was finally aligning in our favor. I was on a high like I'd never experienced before. I fell in love with her all over again, watching her glow with the news, seeing her excitement about expanding our family. I thought this was God's timing. I thought everything was about to be better for us. I thought we'd finally turned a corner. I was wrong. The pregnancy was wonderful, but it was also exhausting for her. She was dealing with morning sickness, fatigue, and all the physical demands of carrying a child while also caring for our older daughter. I tried to help, but I was still operating from the same emotional playbook that had failed us before. I focused on the practical things, making sure she had everything she needed, taking care of finances, preparing for the baby's arrival. When our second daughter was born, it was another moment of pure joy. She was perfect, and I was completely smitten. But while I was bonding with the baby, I was missing the signs that my wife was struggling. She was dealing with postpartum depression, though we didn't have a name for it at the time. She was overwhelmed, exhausted, and feeling isolated in her own home. I thought I was being helpful. Every day when I came home from work, I would take over with the baby so she could rest, shower, or go out for a break. I was proud of myself for being so supportive. But what I couldn't see was that she needed more than practical help. She needed emotional support, understanding, and connection. During this time, she was talking to her friends about our problems. This wasn't unusual. She'd always been someone who processed things verbally, who needed to talk through her feelings with people she trusted. Our best friend was one of those people. He had always been a good listener, someone who offered advice and support when things got tough. But I didn't know about the conversation that changed everything. One day, in a moment of desperation and vulnerability, she asked him what it would have been like if she and he were together instead of us. It was probably meant as a hypothetical question, a way of exploring her feelings about our relationship. But his response opened a door that should have stayed closed. He told her that she was the one who got away. He revealed that he had always loved her, that it had been painful to watch her create a family and life with his best friend instead of him. He said that it should have been him she walked down the aisle to, him she had children with, him she built a life with. This conversation shattered her perception of everything. The friend she had been confiding in, the man who had been there for our family through everything, wasn't just a supportive friend. He was someone who had been in love with her for years, someone who had been waiting for his chance. She began to see their entire history differently. All those times he had been there for her, all those moments of support and understanding, had they been genuine friendship, or had they been something else? Had he been the friend she thought he was, or had he been playing a longer game? Around this time, I was pushing for us to move to a bigger house. With the new baby, we needed more space, but I was going to need help with the mortgage. She stepped up and decided to start working, which I thought was a great idea. She needed something for herself, something that would give her a sense of purpose and accomplishment outside of being a mother. The job she found was in construction, working with our best friend. Ironically, it was a job I had actually helped him get. A friend of mine had offered me the position first, but I was on a different career path and didn't want it. So I introduced him to my friend, thinking I was doing him a favor. The job required her to travel out of town sometimes, which made me nervous at first. But she would be with someone I trusted completely, and one of my female family members was also working on the crew. I felt comfortable with the arrangement. I would stay home with the girls while she was working, taking care of everything on the home front. I thought this time apart might actually be good for us. I thought maybe she would miss me, miss our life together, and come back with a renewed appreciation for what we had. I thought the independence and sense of accomplishment would make her feel better about herself and, by extension, about us. I was wrong again. I only found out about the affair because our friend's girlfriend became suspicious. She called me one night around 3 a.m., her voice shaking with emotion. She told me she had found messages on his phone that made it seem like he and my wife were having an affair. She sent them to me, and I stared at my phone screen in disbelief. The messages were suggestive, but they weren't explicit enough for me to be certain. In my mind, there was no way this could be happening. These were two people I trusted more than anyone else in the world. These were people who loved me, who cared about our family, who would never betray me like this. I actually defended both of them to his girlfriend. I told her that they had been friends for so long that she didn't understand the nature of their relationship. I said it was just friendly conversation that might look bad to someone who didn't know their history. I was so certain of their loyalty that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. When I confronted my wife about the messages, she sat there and looked me in the eyes and told me she would never do something like that. She said she could never be attracted to him in that way, that the very idea was ridiculous. And I believed her. I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the small voice in my head that was telling me something was wrong. But that voice wouldn't go away. A few weeks later, when she went out with her friends, including him, I made a decision that would change everything. I looked through her work iPad, which was connected to her phone, so I could see all her messages. The things I read destroyed me. There was no way to misinterpret what I was seeing. The messages were explicit, intimate, and left no doubt about what was happening between them. But the message that hit me the hardest was one she had sent to her cousin, telling her how much she loved the way he made love to her. Made love? Not just sex, but making love. This wasn't just physical betrayal, it was emotional betrayal on a level I hadn't imagined possible. When I confronted her with the evidence, she couldn't deny it anymore. She admitted everything. She told me it had been going on for months, that it wasn't just one mistake but an ongoing affair. She said they had developed feelings for each other, that it wasn't just about sex but about emotional connection. She explained that he was there for her in ways that I never had been. He listened to her, really listened. He made her feel seen and valued. He gave her the emotional support that she had been begging me for throughout our entire relationship. She said she had been checked out of our marriage long before they ever crossed that line physically. The pain of that admission was indescribable. Not only had she betrayed me, but she had been emotionally absent from our marriage for who knows how long. While I was thinking we were working through our problems, she had already given up on us. But the betrayal by him was almost worse. This man had been my best friend, had stood beside me at my wedding, had been a father figure to my daughter. How long had he been planning this? Had he stayed my friend just to stay close to her? Had he become close to my daughter as a way to stay close to her mother? I thought about all the times she had vented to him about our problems, all the times she had told him what she needed from me that she wasn't getting. Had he been taking notes? Had he been using her frustrations as a playbook for how to win her over? Every piece of advice he had given me about relationships, every time he had listened to me talk about my marriage troubles, had he been playing both sides? And why hadn't he ever come to me directly? If he really cared about our friendship, about our family, why hadn't he pulled me aside and told me I was about to lose my wife if I didn't change? Why had he let me stumble around in the dark while he positioned himself as her emotional savior? In the weeks that followed, I was consumed by questions that had no satisfying answers. Why didn't she just leave me instead of cheating? If she was so unhappy, so checked out, why didn't she have the courage to end our marriage before starting something with someone else? Why did she choose to hurt me in the cruelest way possible? Why did she allow herself to be alone with him if she knew how he felt about her? After that first conversation where he revealed his feelings, why didn't she put up boundaries? Why didn't she tell me what had happened so we could deal with it together? Was it easier to betray me because she was away from home, away from the daily reminders of our life together? When she was out of town with him, was it easier to pretend that I didn't exist, that our daughters didn't exist, that the life we had built together was just a dream? And what about all the times she came home to me after being with him? How did she look me in the eyes? How did she kiss me goodnight? How did she tuck our daughters into bed, knowing what she was doing behind my back? As the initial shock wore off, I was forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself and our marriage. While I would never excuse her betrayal, I had to acknowledge the role I had played in pushing her to that breaking point. My emotional immaturity hadn't just been a minor character flaw, it had been a fundamental barrier to intimacy in our relationship. I had been so focused on providing for my family financially that I had forgotten to provide for them emotionally. I had been so afraid of vulnerability that I had built walls that kept out the very person I loved most. The childhood trauma I had experienced, the absence of emotional connection, the lack of a father figure, the mother who couldn't show affection, had shaped me in ways I was only beginning to understand. I had spent so many years thinking that love was about actions rather than words, about presence rather than emotional availability. But my wife had been drowning, and I had been throwing her life preservers when what she really needed was for me to jump in the water with her. She had been begging for reassurance, for connection, for me to see her as more than just the mother of my children or the person who shared my bed. She had needed me to be emotionally present, and I had been emotionally absent. This didn't justify what she had done, but it helped me understand how we had gotten to this point. She had been vulnerable and alone, and he had been there to catch her when she fell. He had given her what I couldn't or wouldn't give her. In the immediate aftermath of the discovery, I felt like I was living in a nightmare. The two people I had trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. I felt stupid, naive, and completely unprepared for the emotional devastation that followed. But what surprised me most was that I still loved her. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the lies and the months of deception, I still wanted to be with her. I still wanted our family to work. I still believed that what we had was worth fighting for. She has been transparent since I found out. She has stayed, even though it would probably be easier for her to leave. She has answered my questions, even the ones that hurt to answer. She has told me that she still loves me and wants to work on our marriage, although she has been honest about the fact that it will take time for her to fully commit to us again. The hardest part is that she has been there for me emotionally as I deal with the pain of her betrayal. She has been the shoulder I cry on, the person who comforts me when the waves of anger and hurt wash over me. There's something deeply twisted about finding comfort in the arms of the person who caused your pain, but there's also something beautiful about it. She has told me that they haven't been together recently because he is now in a relationship with someone else. She has said that the feelings she thought she had developed for him weren't what she believed them to be in the moment. She has admitted that the experience with him was different from what we had, but she has also said that different doesn't necessarily mean better. If we're going to make this work, we both have a lot of work to do. I have to learn how to be emotionally available in ways I never have been before. I have to confront the trauma of my childhood and learn how to love someone properly. I have to stop defending myself long enough to really hear what she's telling me about what she needs. She has to rebuild trust that she destroyed. She has to prove that she's committed to our marriage, not just staying because it's convenient or because she's afraid of the alternative. She has to be patient with my healing process while also doing her own work to figure out why she made the choices she made. We both have to learn how to communicate in ways that don't leave the other person feeling attacked or dismissed. We have to create new patterns of interaction that serve our relationship instead of destroying it. The road ahead is long and uncertain. There are days when I'm overwhelmed by the magnitude of what we're trying to rebuild. There are moments when I question whether I'm being weak for wanting to stay, whether I'm setting myself up for more heartbreak down the road. But I also know that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. And I'm choosing to fight for us, for our family, for the possibility that we can be better than we were before. I'm choosing to believe that people can change, that marriages can heal, that trust can be rebuilt. At the end of the day, we're all human. We all make mistakes, some bigger than others. We all have wounds that shape how we interact with the world. We all have the capacity for both great love and great harm. My wife made a terrible choice, but she's also a wonderful mother to our children. She's someone who has been by my side through loss and grief and joy. She's someone who has shared 15 years of her life with me, who has grown up alongside me, who has been my partner in building something beautiful despite our flaws. Our best friend, our former best friend, made choices that I can't forgive right now. But he was also someone who showed up for us when we needed him, who cared for my daughter, who celebrated our victories and mourned our losses. People are complicated, and even the people who hurt us most are still human beings with their own pain and their own reasons for doing what they do. I'm not ready to forgive him yet. I may never be. But I'm trying to understand that his actions came from a place of love, however misguided. He loved her, and he thought he was saving her from a marriage that was making her miserable. He was wrong to go about it the way he did, but his feelings were real. Writing this story has been therapeutic in ways I didn't expect. It has forced me to confront not just what happened to me, but what I did to contribute to the situation. It has helped me see the patterns in our relationship that led to this crisis, and it has given me hope that we can create new patterns moving forward. I don't know if we'll make it. I don't know if the trust can be fully rebuilt, if the love can be restored, if we can create the kind of marriage we should have had from the beginning. But I know that we're both committed to trying, and that feels like enough for now. The shame of what happened is something I'm still learning to live with. It's embarrassing to admit that your wife chose someone else, that your best friend betrayed you, that you were so blind to what was happening in your own home. But shame thrives in secrecy, and there's something liberating about telling the truth about what happened. I'm not the same person I was before I found out about the affair. I'm not sure if I'm better or worse, but I'm different. I'm more aware of my own limitations, more conscious of the work I need to do, more grateful for the love I have even when it's complicated. This is my story, and it's still being written. The ending isn't predetermined, and that's both terrifying and hopeful. We get to choose what happens next, and I'm choosing to believe that the next chapter can be better than the last.